Well, hello friends. Welcome back. I'm Sarita V, and today I'm going to be making a mannequin that is my size. So back here you see two mannequins. One of them, the black one with the jacket on, I use a lot for like product display for reselling clothes, but the white one I picked up at a thrift store for $12.99. So I was really happy to find it. I did not pay that little for my first one. And I decided that I would make a sewing mannequin so that I could fit patterns and mock-ups on and draping and that kind of thing for garment construction. So anyway, what I'm planning on doing is taking some quilt batting that I have laying around. This was a really soft organic cotton batting that I got for some quilts that I made years and years ago. It's kind of thin, but it's very dense, so I think that'll be good to wrap around the bust and hips. And then I also have this jersey knit fabric that is white with polka dots, kind of crepey, and it's got a really good stretch. So I think we're gonna make like there's an existing sleeve over the whole mannequin right now, so I'm gonna make a new sleeve so that you don't see all of my batting that I put on underneath. And then I'm not really sure how these are gonna work out, but I do have a staple gun. I kind of really hope it works. It is fiberglass, so I don't know if we'll go through that or not. But at the very least, I have an assortment of safety pins and also some really small little straight pins. So those are my backup options for getting them in the right position. So the first thing that I did was to take my measurements and leave a couple of notes there. And I did this on my own except for the back measurements. So it's always good to get a friend if you can. So I'll show you a picture of myself that I took, and then I'm going to be using that for my own reference just so that I know where parts are bigger. So this mannequin's about a size, probably a 4, maybe a size 2 in some spots. I am not a size 4, I'm a little bit bigger than that. So let's take a look at the picture. So I'll just show you from the front. I took I took a neck measurement. I took bust, under bust, my natural waist. I took my tummy, which is bigger than other parts, and then I took my hips. And the hips includes the hiney, which would be the thickest part. So I want, the apex of my behind. So on the back, I took the shoulder width, and then also the measurement between my neck and my natural waist, and then from my natural waist to my hiney. And then also in the front, I forgot to mention, I did from the under bust to my my hip line. So I tend to be kind of short in the torso, and so I wanted to make sure that the garment that I use reflects that. I guess the next thing I need to do is look at my mannequin and see how big she is and how to fit her. So I need to add some padding. I do want to, when I add this, I do want to make sure that I can remove the panels in case I change, or be able to add panels because bodies change. That was another reason why I wanted to pick a jersey knit for the outside, so that I could easily take it off and then adjust the padding underneath. Let's see if this works on fiberglass. I don't want a uniboob, so I am going to put a little extra stuffing in the boobs. close, 1 inch to go. Okay, so far my bust is at 37, so I need to get to 38, so I'm 1 inch short on that. But before I fill it out and well endow myself, I'm gonna actually work on the back and shoulders because I might be wider in the back, and that could be causing some of the extra girth around this area. And if not, then I'll do some more padding in the chest. But I do want to make sure that the measurements go in the right spot. My under bust is spot on. It's actually maybe just a little tiny bit under 32 and a half. I measure 32 3/4. So I'm going to leave a 1/4 inch just in case any extra builds up in the back. And now I'm going to work on the waist and the hip area. It's like a marsupial. One thing that's really nice about this, and I'm pretty sure the other polyester, like the kind of whiter, this was an organic cotton that I had purchased for quilting, but for baby quilts in particular. But it's got a really nice texture, so it kind of velcros itself to each other. So like these here are just sitting on top of it, and they just sit nice. You just need to press them in. Obviously when you get to places where gravity is stronger than that, then you'll need to staple it. And as far as the stapler goes, it leaves a little bit to be desired. I tried finding the staples with points in them because these are just flat, and they didn't have them at my hardware store, but these work pretty well. They're hitting about 1 every 2 staples actually goes into the fiberglass, and it doesn't really go through more than like 3 or 4 layers of the batting, but you know, it's working great. It's better than using the straight pins and then having the pins poke through, which was my third option. The safety pins also you would be able to see them, but at least they wouldn't hurt. And my layers are actually getting really thick, so the staple gun's not working as well, and I also don't want to compress all the layers completely, so I'm going to use some really tiny small gold safety pins that I have just to kind of attach them so they don't fall off. Now we're going to work on the booty. So the first thing is you want to make sure that your hips are in the right place because we're all different sizes. So for me, I measured my under bust to my hip line. So I wrapped the area around my largest spot here and figured out where it was, basically right around your pubic bone. And for me, that was 11 inches. So I'm going to mark on here where my hip line is. Okay, and now that we know where the hips are, she needs to be measured out to 40.5. Now, if I look at me, I've got my little pooch here, and then it kind of almost goes backward. So I'm not going to build anything out really out front. I might smooth it out a little bit, but this does look pretty good. She's got a good arch there. So what I need to do is add to the back. Okay, so we're at 38 inches, so we're not too far off. I'm 40.5, so I need to add another 2.5 inches. So I will be working on that, and that's mostly going to be in the back. And yeah, I mean, I think I need to put some cushion back there. So my husband likes to call it the FLA, the Fantastic Latin Hiney. Well, He doesn't use hiney, but I do want to keep it family friendly. And just in case I've offended anybody, I'm half Costa Rican, so yeah, I'm Latina. Actually, I had a phrase for a long time that said, I don't look it, but I can cook it. So, you ever need a throwdown? And I'm not gonna secure this because what I'm gonna do is make that pillowcase with the jersey knit, and then I will just cinch it up underneath it. She's looking pretty good. She's got the same butt, waist, under bust, and tummy as I do. And now I want to look at her shoulders. So I've got decent shoulders, but they do slouch a little tiny bit forward. So I might put a little tiny bit of fabric back here just to kind of give her a little bit more slumped shoulder. My shoulders are also, they don't slouch too much. So some people have really soft sloped shoulders. Other people have really broad shoulders. So mine are just kind of in the middle. So I might add a little tiny bit here on the top of her muscles to add a little bit there. So a little bit on top and a little bit of shoulder work through the back here. And then I still need to add an inch to her bust. I did check her neck, which is 14.5, so that matches mine. I also checked from the neck to the shoulder seam. Hers is 5 inches, mine is 5 inches as well. And I did check from the neck to the waist. And I did measure her shoulders, and she's 15 inches, which is what I am as well. So I don't need to worry about that. Good. And then I also double checked that from my seam line in my shirt all the way through the back to the seam line in my other shirt here measures 17.5, and I can still see where the seam line is on my mannequin existing, so I checked that, and we are doing pretty good. It's about a 1/4 inch off. Maybe even a 1/2 inch. So I'm going to pad out the back because my back is a little bit wider, and then once I do that, then I'll finish by adding the bust. So I don't want to add to the bust if it's actually really in my back, because then my boobs will be off when I sew my dresses and my back won't be wide enough. Now, as I'm adding to the bust, I want to make sure that I'm not adding to her underbust. So that's the reason I folded this strip up, so that it keeps the underbust still at the right thickness. Perfect, 38 inches. And we still match 32 3/4. So that is going to look good. I'm going to secure her now. What do you think? She's looking pretty good. So the reason I wanted to cover her is because now I've got all these layers all over, and I think that we're going to be ready to do that pretty soon. So I'm going to just drape this. I thought about just making like a pillowcase cover or something, but I think since I've got her, and I want to make sure that the seams are actually down the sides in the right places, I am going to just drape it and make a pillowcase for her while she's on here, and that will be a lot easier. This is the main reason why you don't sew barefoot, because you drop a pin and then you can't find it. So when I drape her in this, I'm going to actually sew it inside out. That way I can have the raw edges facing me, and then that would be what I sew. So it'll just be a little bit easier. Now that I've got her pinned in the front, I'm going to trim away the excess, and then I will do the back as well. And I'm going to leave a generous seam allowance, but ultimately I will end up tightening this all up too at the end. So. And then I'm going to leave about 3 inches at the bottom. That way I can cinch it up. There's like a little, maybe I'll leave 4. That way I can make like a little pocket, kind of like to run some elastic or rope through, so that I can tighten it up inside the mannequin. So. Good. I think I'm going to have to put a dart in here. I'm not too worried about actually sewing the dart, so I'm just going to kind of sew it in on the side seam here, but there is a little tiny bit of a flap there, so I do want to make sure that that is accounted for. I was kind of hoping the jersey knit, I wouldn't have to worry about that. And I'm really glad that I left the original piece on, because there is a little tiny bit of foam under there, so that's nice. It's adding some padding, but I'm following the side seam all the way up and down. You can still see it on the bottom here, and so that's where I'm making sure that my seam goes. That way when I make my garment, I get the side seam in the right place. Okay, so I've got her fitted. I'm going to take this off now, and then, and just so I'm clear, I pinned it to the fabric to each other, not to the actual mannequin, so I'll be able to take this off very carefully. And if you're not really sure if you're going to be able to do it very well, you could always do a running stitch all along, just like a basting temporary stitch by hand, and then you can take it off, and then that will work as well. So I've got it off the mannequin, and what I want to say is make sure you use a knit fabric. This will not work for a woven cotton broadcloth, anything like that, unless you want to actually sew it on the mannequin, then that would be fine. But the knit, you do want it big enough so that it'll be able to come up and over the chest. So if you don't have a serger, which I'm going to use a serger because it's just a really nice stitch and it's fast and it cuts my fabric as I go. But if you don't have a serger, I recommend using a walking foot with a jersey knit needle and using the diagonal jersey knit stitch. So I mentioned how I use that in my sweater cardigan conversion video, but I might make an extra video just on how I like to use that. It's just a little tiny bit better. Obviously you don't want to use a straight stitch on a knit, but it's a little bit better than the zigzag system. So. Now that I know that it fits, I'm going to take this off and sew the casing at the top, so that'll be gathered. Maybe at a later time I might make like a wood or metal plug for the top, but I just want to sew a casing in the top, put some rope or some elastic in there and do that. And then I'm also gonna do it on the bottom. There you have it, a doppelganger of Sarah. Now you know all of my measurements. Way to not be shy on the internet. So anyway, I'm really excited because now I can tailor some clothes to me without having to try them on over and over again. And next week I am planning on working on this Simplicity 1777 retro a vintage reproduction pattern with this beautiful rayon. So I hope you will join me. Find me on Instagram and Facebook at Sarita V Pinup, and if you like what you see, don't forget to subscribe. So I think that's it. See you next week. Bye.